Join us as career changers, company leaders, industry experts, and others who have been in your shoes share their stories, insights, and lessons learned to help you find enjoyment through employment in the tech world. I'm Nemo Ashong, and this is the Empjoyment Podcast. Hey there, employees, and welcome to episode 12. The pressure is on. Okay, so maybe it's not necessarily on in this moment. You're just listening to a podcast. Hopefully you're doing something that brings you joy and keeps the pressure kind of low. But I bring that up because in today's conversation, we actually talk a lot about delivering great results for clients in high stakes situations. And we have the pleasure of doing this with Sam Port, who's the creative director at Proscenium. And Sam and I go way back. We actually sang together in college, and he's been an inspiration to me as he's gone through his various career transitions, all the way from being an amusement park operator to what he's doing now by helping create memorable experiences that deliver business results for big name clients. I think you're going to be quite surprised with today's conversation, and I invite you to go and check out the show notes over on the Empjoyment website, which you can get to at empjoyment.com/Samport or just empjoyment.com/12. Generally speaking, that's just the numbers, 1, 2. Generally speaking, every episode will have the show notes, which is a summary of the episode, available online. And all you need to do is just go to empjoyment.com/the episode number. And that just happens all in numerals. All right. So I'm saying it now in case I don't say it later on. Go check out the show notes. But first, listen and gain great value from this conversation with Sam Port. Why, hello there, employees. Nemo Ashong here, and welcome to the Empjoyment Podcast, where we're focused on helping people just like you find enjoyment through employment. Today, we are joined by none other than my good friend, Sam Port. Sam is the creative director at Proscenium, and he's going to spend some time with us talking to us about his journey throughout life. I'm going to slow it all down now here, Sam, and create some space for you to give an introduction. It's good to have you on the podcast.
This is awesome, Nemo. Thank you.
Definitely. So Sam, I'm really excited to explore how you found employment in your life here. But before we get into all that, I'd like to get to know you better just from a more personal and professional standpoint. Would you mind telling us about your life, love, work, and passion?
Absolutely. I think, my current role with my company as a creative director, I do the live event arm of marketing, and I would say that's the experience and a job that I never in a million years would have expected to get into based off what I thought I wanted to do and some of the journeys I had along the way. I'd say that I am where I am now because I pursued two very strong passions kind of simultaneously. One for the theme park and amusement park world and sort of the operations side of that. And the other one with the enjoyment I had for performing on stage and singing. And those two experiences over the course of my life kind of led me to where I am now. So that definitely is an overview of, I think, my background very generally. But it's, and I will certainly elaborate on that further later, but pursuing those two passions has gotten me to a job that I am also now very passionate about that I definitely didn't think I would be doing.
Wow, that's spectacular. And employees, I'm going to share something here. I've had the personal experience of benefiting from Sam's passions of theme parks and the enjoyment of singing. I actually Sam and I sang together in college in a cappella group called Last Call. And he was instrumental in planning a trip that we took over to the west coast of the U.S., which may or may not be west of somewhere, but in that regard, we got a chance to sing.
Headline to Disneyland.
Yes, exactly.
For 5 people right after a 6-year-old dance trip.
And that's the way. I don't include those other parts when I talk about the story. Headlining at Disneyland is where it ends. But as you can tell, you're in for a treat here. Sam is someone that just has an incredible background and journey, and is also just very given with his time and his experiences. So with that, Sam, before we jump into the meat of all this here, what do you like to do for fun?
Well, I would say I like to. Well, I will say I love to go to a theme park and just hit on every roller coaster in the place. The unfortunate part, I don't get to do that as often as I would like. But I spend a lot of time thinking about coasters, theme park experience. So I'd say probably more time thinking about it than doing it. But whenever I get a chance to go hit up some rides, Six Flags, Cedar Point, Busch Gardens, I'm there.
Oh, nice. Well, if you're looking for an excuse or looking for a buddy anytime soon, please just reach out to me. Let me know. I'd love to come out. I will hop on a plane from Singapore to make it happen. So, Sam, what we like to do here is start out framing our entire conversation with some kind of like guiding mantra, guiding quote that you've used to help frame your success here. And I was wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing with us that quote or mantra that you use in your day-to-day life.
Yeah, and actually this has gotten me to think about when I probably don't give this a lot of thought. A lot of the mantras there's more than one, but I think the one that has resonated with me the most over the course of my life is something that my dad once told me when I was complaining to him about a job I had, and this was years ago, where I was just really just over it, I guess, for lack of a better word. And he said, "Sam, give it a year." And he said, "You won't really be able to judge anything until you give it a year." And I think that has really resonated where I've gotten myself into some situations and jobs where I wasn't sure about it. That amount of time at the minimum, especially when it comes to careers and, again, job focus, that has been good for me because it's allowed me to stick to something and really get to see it fleshed out a little bit more and get to know the people, get more comfortable and confident. And then at that point, I think assess how happy I am with that experience.
Oh, I really like this. So it's not coming in and just taking in whatever is happening right at the onset and saying this isn't the full experience. It's also, at least what I think I was hearing here, is that you're also allowing yourself to get comfortable in that environment and then giving yourself a chance to have like an accurate assessment of like, do I actually like this or not?
Yeah, and I think it's easy to get overwhelmed initially for a lot of factors, if it's personalities or the job itself. And that amount of time just gives you a chance to really take a breath and really assess what it is or you do or do not like about that role or experience.
Would you mind talking about like a role that you've encountered where you had to give it a year and kind of how that played out for you?
Absolutely. And I'll use my current job as a point of reference. And now I'm going on almost 4 years with my job as a creative director. And when I started with it, I think I was not necessarily prepared for the intensity of the job, the amount of travel, the high stakes feeling a lot of times when you're on site and you have these, only one opportunity to put an event on, like some of the personalities, the amount of emails, but again, over the course and ask me 2 years from then and then 3 years, it's just gotten better and better. Also, but to be fair, I'm at a different point in my life. I'm not 18, I'm not 19, I'm, in my 30s. So I've had a chance to jump around jobs for a lot shorter of a time period. And when you finally find something that feels right initially, you really do owe it. I think I owed it to myself to stick through it at least a year and, cut to 4 years later where I'm still learning a lot, but I have a different confidence to approach a lot of these situations better. And I'm happy to go into some specifics about that as we talk. But I do think that idea of just sticking with it, if you can, that's not always going to work, but when you can, it can be helpful.
Awesome, Sam. I think I'm excited to kind of peel that back a little bit here and continue on with the journey here. But before we do that, then why don't we get to understand what your journey has been like? Can you tell us, like, from your standpoint here, you're now sitting here 4 years on the job, you had tremendous success here, but it didn't always start out that way. Would you take us to the very beginning and let us know how you ended up in this position?
Yeah, and I can try to make this somewhat brief, but growing up, I'm from Florida, Tampa, Florida, so I grew up in a theme park heavy environment. So I had Busch Gardens in my backyard. I had Disney just about an hour away. So very early on in my life, that became a big part in my blood, basically. And I just was pretty sold on the fact that whatever I do with my life, throughout high school and college, I was going to do something in theme park operations. I did end up pursuing that in college. I went to Cornell. They have a hospitality program, so I definitely wanted to focus on that particular umbrella of entertainment, especially theme parks. every summer he worked in different amusement parks, like Busch Gardens in Tampa and Six Flags, New England, and Cedar Point, with the intent of going into the industry professionally afterwards. So after college, I worked for Disney for some time as an operations manager at Epcot. And it was still around that time that I was getting a little restless because I also had a very strong passion for performing, which I did, obviously with you, Nemo, in college and in high school. I always did that as an amateur and for fun because that came out of a very passionate place as well. And felt like at that time in my life, I kind of wanted to pursue that. And this is a little bit counter to, I think, my initial advice, so to speak, of doing something for a year. I wasn't at Disney that long, but I was there long enough to realize I wanted to pursue performing while I still was young and mobile and had a chance to do that. So I essentially went that direction for a while, learned how to audition properly, took voice lessons, and got a lucky break in Las Vegas. So moved out there to do a show for a couple of years on the Strip at Bally's Casino called Jubilee. It's an old showgirl. She just closed after about 35 years, but it was an old showgirl review. And sang in that show for a while, and then that opened up other opportunities on cruise ships. So did that off and on for a few years, and other theater experiences in New York. And then a couple of years, or more than 4 years ago, I helped my cousin produce a musical he needed some help, and I was unemployed at the time. And that experience of producing a show, and that was the first time I had not been on stage, but been on the production side. It was exciting in a very different way. Just to be able to see something come together from a behind-the-scenes point of view was, again, just thrilling. And to have had a creative say and to be able to have a vision and see that come to life was just awesome. It was an adrenaline rush I hadn't had before. So when that was over, I definitely realized that I wanted to pursue production in some form, if it was theatrical. But I didn't know where that would lead. And I think I had a very honest conversation with someone right after that, where I basically said, here's what I've done in my life. These seem to be somewhat disparate backgrounds of theme park operations and theater, and I've done this musical production. But now I just said to him, I don't know what to do, but can you help me? So I did open myself up to advice and from someone who I respected. And he basically said to me, I have a friend who's in this event marketing industry. You both have very similar backgrounds. I'd love to put you in touch. He may be looking for someone, but even if he's not, it's worth you guys having a meet and greet. So I followed up with that. He and I hit it off. He eventually was looking for someone. I started off interning for a couple months and then went full time. And, I started off as essentially apprentice intern with the title of a creative associate, which is sort of like a catch-all for helping out in any way I could with the creative process with these corporate events and product launches and experiential kind of marketing events. And that led to a few years later, so my title is creative director. So I have a lot more responsibility and a lot more client-facing opportunities. But that is as succinct as I can make it. But my biggest point with all that is these experiences previously have led to what I'm doing now, and without necessarily trying too hard. I opened myself up and I think that would be part two of the advice or the guidance, is just being open to new opportunities that may not seem like what you think you want to do.
Oh, wow. Sam, this is really great. Just like even being able to go through this and hear all these different steps here. As a friend, I'm like, oh, so that was what was going on. Do you mind if I explore a little bit of this journey a little bit further? Because we do have time. As long as you have time, I have time.
I have all the time in the world.
All right, cool. And Joyce, we're going in. We're doing this for you, right? So, Sam, you had kind of talked about here that like you had a lucky break, and then you kind of said, it opened up some other experiences. And I was kind of wondering, basically, those to me are kind of like flags of like, all right, something happened where you probably struggled for quite some time, and then something came to life. So I was wondering if you can talk either about like how you first landed your first lucky break out there, or what some of the experiences were that were opened up for you post Jubilee.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think when it comes to lucky breaks, I think one big lucky break would be the Jubilee show in Vegas, because that did open up a lot more performing experiences. And I think for that, I think I know why that led to that first performing job. And I can also, touch on where I am, with my current job. Yeah. But with Jubilee, I walked into that audition room not feeling the pressure necessarily. I walked into there the right way. I don't want to say not caring, but I just didn't put as much weight on that. So I actually sang from a place of enjoyment and freedom. And that's really wasn't the case for me. I was usually very, very nervous. And something felt different about that. And I think that freedom and not putting so much weight on something made me a better performer in that moment, and therefore opened up that opportunity. So whether or not it was, yes, there was some element of luck because I was a certain height at a certain time when they were looking for a guy. So there's that element, but also I can attribute it to feeling very free and open. And I think that speaks more, again, to the being open to things coming in your way. And again, that was a show that I didn't know a whole lot about, but I went into there just with a little bit of enthusiasm, sort of blind enthusiasm, and that was sensed by the casting directors.
I like that term.
Yeah, and I would say for the job that I have now, I also went into that talking to who my current boss is. His name is Chuck. He has a theater and theme park background as well. And my first, I would say, quote unquote interview, because it wasn't officially an interview, was definitely more of a conversation where I was at ease, because there wasn't this enormous amount of pressure that I was putting on myself to land the job. It was absolutely a conversation where my passions and my enthusiasm was coming out naturally. And I think that ultimately, again, led to getting the opportunity at Proscenium.
Wow. I think that's really great there. And I'm hearing this enthusiasm, openness, being willing to be free out there, and to just let your natural self come through without having the burdens of any other expectations or any other pressures there. I can, like, you had talked a little bit earlier about your experiences now 4 years into the job versus when you had first started and you were feeling kind of like high stakes and such. I was wondering, maybe we can spend a little bit of time diving into like what you're currently doing and how you've been able to embrace freedom, openness, and that like kind of blind enthusiasm to help you propel from where you were 4 years ago to where you are now.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good, I think there's some degree of who the client is. I mean, I do have a pretty broad spectrum of clients where I have varying degrees of relationships with my main point of contact on the client side. And I think some of that comes with just pure experience after about 4 years of initially being, when I first started the job I have now, I was more in a support role for my boss, Chuck. So he was doing a lot more of the client facing, where I was essentially helping support his creative visions. And I think one of the scarier leaps is when you start pitching your own ideas. And, that takes some time to be able to know what an appropriate idea is to pitch. And that just comes with experience of, watching my boss come up with these various ideas and themes and set designs and what have you for these various events, and knowing what's realistic. And so that takes some time. But once that confidence starts to set in, I think that's where the fun also comes in. Because this is about, at least my job is to provide memorable, talked about experiences for consumers if it's at a product launch versus or these annual shareholders meetings or employee meetings where they need to leave there feeling energized about their company. And it needs to be done through storytelling in whatever that ends up being, whatever medium this, if it's a video production or we do really cool engaging photo booths, or it could be anything as long as you support it. But that just comes from, in my case, watching a real professional like my boss go through it, kind of learning from him, and then taking that. It essentially is like an audition. Sometimes you got to go into that room, and when it comes out of a place of when the client can hear my enthusiasm for something and my pure joy of an idea, then they will be on board too. So it's less of a sell at that point. It's more of they're on board with me because they're excited by it too, because they can hear it in my voice, and it's genuine. And then one of the toughest positions I'm ever in is to have to pitch something or try to quote unquote sell something that wasn't an idea of mine or didn't come out of a place of, I'm trying to think of the best word for that, if it doesn't feel genuine.
Yeah, I feel it almost like what I'm getting is like a sense of like you had to like manufacture the enthusiasm and joy in a sense, which like because it's almost like you found your secret sauce. This is how you
up on that. I mean, if you're a lot of times we'll get in front of a room of a bunch of people from the client side and stand up and present our keynote or PowerPoint deck of ideas. And when we're excited about it, they're excited about it. When we are just going through the motions, they pick up on that in a second.
That's really interesting. And I think like, it's cool to hear how you even said that you look at it as an audition. And I know that like a lot of employees out here, some of them might be coming from theater backgrounds. I know I worked with a number of people who were in theater at the company I was at beforehand. But others might just be used to just interviews. But regardless of what it is, it feels that like whether you're making a pitch and you're selling an idea or you're selling yourself or whatever it is, you're approaching it and you found like your general core way of really just connecting with other people. If I'm getting this right here, connecting with something that they can find authentic, that they can trust, and that like really inspires something within themselves to come along for the ride.
Absolutely. And I think that the best experiences I have with, in my clients specifically, is when it's like even what we're doing now, it's a conversation. I think when they feel a part of it, the best ideas come out of definitely these back and forths. I would say 100% of the time, it's not when we come at them with a whole bunch of ideas. It's when there is that collaborative discussion, and they have certain agenda items and they have needs and points to really hit home, and we can take that and expand upon that. That's where it really goes well.
So can I ask you a little bit here about like just creative marketing experiences? Because I know some people out here might be interested in marketing overall and or event planning, and really taking the time to hit different objectives. And Sam, I remember me and you were having a conversation a couple of weeks ago where you had just made it really clear how important the objectives of the client or your whoever you're working with were when it came to these experiences. Would you mind talking a little bit about that, just from like a skill set and a way that you might approach it to help employees get a clearer picture as to how they can?
I think what would be helpful first is to talk a little bit about the types of experiential marketing. So as Nate that I work with, Proscenium, there's basically two main buckets. There's B2B, which is business to business, and B2C, which is business to consumer. And the quickest definitions I can give. So business to consumer would be, for example, if you're walking in the mall or you're walking somewhere and there's or you're at a music festival and there's a brand has like an activation area, or they have a tent set up and they have like maybe photo booths, or they're giving out prizes, or that's basically a business to consumer. They are trying to get you to become aware of their brand, excited about their brand, and eventually, of course, want to buy or partake with their brand or use their services. And so that's B2C. B2B, business to business, tends to be more of these internal events, which the general public doesn't always see. But these tend to be like big annual employee meetings. For example, Walmart was a client for a couple of years. They had a big annual shareholders meeting, which was 17,000 people in an arena, but they were all employees or shareholders of the company. And they were treated to like a 3+ hour concert of different celebrities, as well as, speeches from the CEO, the CFO. And they had to leave there feeling excited about working for Walmart, for example. Another client that I spent a lot of time with is T-Mobile, and I helped to produce and direct a lot of their employee recognition events, their incentive events. So if you're a top performing T-Mobile employee, you get invited every year to this blowout trip to Hawaii or Vegas, and it's creating an experience for them to feel rewarded and appreciated, so that they will then go back and want to win that trip again and do a better job at work. So that is a B2B event. It's still an experience. It still involves their brand, but it's internal. Hopefully that gives a good kind of overview of kind of live event end of marketing. Yeah,
absolutely. So I'm getting this here. So we have the B2C. If I was going to paraphrase, because if I can't say it out loud, then I don't actually know it. So if I was going to take this in here, this is like the things that are open to the public, that just any individual, like let's say myself, would go out there and maybe I would get a small trinket or like an opportunity to engage with something that's branded by this organization. And the purpose there is that the organization is trying to just build that overall awareness, build that like, know, and trust factor, so that you would later on recognize them later on for some kind of sales or something else, some other purpose, but primarily awareness being the end goal. Correct. And then from the business to business perspective, it actually seems that there might be several different objectives there. So you talked about one about like, coming together, getting excited, and feeling great about the year ahead. And then another one here, just be like, let's recognize the people for the great work that they've done, and bring that together in a meaningful way.
Yep. And I think either way, even though there are different types of B2B events, they both speak to essentially getting employees or people involved with a company excited about the company and want to do a better job and increase sales and a number of other objectives. So either way, whether or not you're making your employees feel appreciated, you're doing so to also get them to be more invested in their job and therefore do a better job.
Yeah, so there's an end business outcome of all this here. It isn't just fun and games or like nice swag that you can take home. There's
right. I mean, these companies are spending millions of dollars annually for these events, which again the general public may not see, but they feel that is a worthwhile investment that will pay off in spades down the road. Or for example, Harley Davidson's a client, so we do an annual dealership meeting. So all the dealership owners around the world come and they'll see new motorcycles or new products to then want to go back to their stores and push new merchandise.
Got you. Oh, that's really, really fun there. And so, Sam, can I ask and I'm going to continue with some of the questions that I had out here, but I'm just kind of curious how, and this might be the secret sauce, so you may not be able to go with it, but like, how do you what's your general approach in terms of like being able to create and craft an experience that meets these overall objectives? Like, is there something that like you keep in mind if someone's trying to market to a specific end goal? Well, yeah,
it's a good question. It's also, there's a lot of answers to that. A lot of it depends on what the goal is of the client. It could be very, very specific. I think that I personally work better under very specific framework. So a certain budget. A lot of times the venue, if it's going to be in a venue like a ballroom or an expo center or anything like that, we're limited by space. So there are those kind of elements that could limit you. But at the same time, there's a lot that you can, I'm constantly checking industry websites and going to trade shows to see what kind of new technology is out there. I keep mentioning photo booths, but another quote that I have heard, I don't remember where I heard it, but when people see other people having fun, they're going to want to stop and partake or stop and be part of the action or wonder what's going on. And this is probably a good way of explaining how we approached a company's need and was able to target the experience to that. Another client we have is Credit Karma, which is a newer brand that's all about promoting awareness of your credit score, and they make money by pairing you with various credit cards and other financial products, and they're very candid about that. But they came to us and said, "Listen, we don't know how much. We don't have a lot of brand awareness. We want to get consumers excited about Credit Karma, and we don't know how to do it, but we want to do it through live events." So we said, "Okay, well, let's look at this. Who is your target demographic?" So we looked to see what was, for example, an underpenetrated market. And we were looking at different factors, different areas of the country. We, together, through conversations, figured out the best place to go. We ended up looking at California for this initial tour. And we looked at different festivals that we could go to create these experiences. But we found when we went to these festivals that we generally were limited to an area footprint of 20 by 20 feet, which is not huge. And that we would also be competing with a lot of other brands having other activations and experiences, basically all competing for attention from festival goers. So you have these environments which are loud, flashy, and so the other challenge, not to mention, is representing a brand that's about credit scores. So already you're dealing with a very touchy subject that a lot of people are not going to want to stop and talk about when they're at a Cinco de Mayo festival. And I say that because that's one of the ones that we went to. So that helped us kind of establish what we needed to do to break the noise and to really set ourselves apart and get people to stop and say, I want to see what's going on at Credit Karma. And so what we did was, and this is something that I'm glad that we go to this trade show every year, but we go to this actually amusement industry trade show, which is something that I've known about for years. I've been going to for fun, but now here's a trade show that's perfect for this work because it's all the latest rides and games and loud, flashy attractions that will get people to stop and want to partake in it. And we saw a prototype of this ride that was like a human version of a high striker. So, you try to hit your mallet and you ring a bell. It's a human version of that where somebody hits a mallet and it sends someone else up in a chair. And there's two of them next to each other. So it's actually a race to the top. So you have 4 people participating at once. It's loud. It's 20 feet tall. It's never been done before. And I remember this from when I was thinking about what could we do to break the noise. I'm like, I remember this ride we had seen at this trade show. And wouldn't that be cool if we could somehow brand it with like credit scores going up the side from 300 to 800 and, that would get people to certainly stop and talk. And so what seemed like a kind of a ludicrous idea when we were initially pitching it to the client, it was something that I think my enthusiasm was coming out. We were able to show them video of it, show people's reaction to it on the trade show floor. It got a huge reaction by a crowd. And like, this is what we want people to do. We want them to stop and check out what's going on. And we want people to say, hey, how do I get to ride that? How do I get to participate in that game? And, oh, well, it's funny you should ask. If you sign up for Credit Karma, you get a chance to experience this. So that is what we ended up doing. We toured this attraction around for a few months around California. We branded it with credit scores. We had brand ambassadors to help staff it and created a huge buzz around it. We had a big social media presence, and it set out what we wanted to do. It got people excited about Credit Karma. It got them to stop. People saw other people having fun. And that was a perfect example of this seemingly ridiculous idea seeming perfectly natural given what we needed to accomplish.
So Sam, like, wow, that is really, really, like, it's fun, it's exciting, and I love how thank you for this concrete example of how you were able to like take this thing about like, here goes an objective, get people to stop, and it's really cool how the various experiences in your life keep adding up. And keep getting leverage to provide value for other people out there. And I think, yeah, Sam.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that I tell the story, and I've used this as an example because this was an extension of a previous part of my life that I was, again, we keep using the word passion, but this came from a place of enthusiasm and passion and was able to parlay that to what I do now. And I think that's why I know what I'm doing is the right career currently.
Absolutely. Like, out of that entire story there, if there was one like nugget or one piece of advice that you would want employees to walk away with, what would that be?
I think now I'm this is all coming to me right now, but I think it would have to be to go with your gut and go with what makes you excited. And again, that will transfer to someone else if you can express that. Awesome. So like, Sam, I would love to, like, we've been really great here about talking about some of the various things that you've been able to do in your career. I'd love to talk about a moment that just didn't work out for you, a place where you reached like a huge challenge or you might have even failed, and then the steps that you took to overcome that. So would you mind telling us a story about a time where things just didn't work out right and the things that you did to overcome that? Yeah. I mean, without getting too specific, I can pinpoint a few moments I've had at work, and I guess with my current role, where I have said something without thinking and saw the financial repercussions of that. And I think that I guess I wish I could give more details on that, but I think that just recognizing how I felt about that, the disappointment I felt in myself, but also knowing that my team, although they were frustrated and they knew it didn't come from a bad place, and they still trusted me. I think that I needed to just be okay with having made those mistakes. And I'm fully aware that something else could happen down the road. But just knowing that things do get better. What seemed to be one of the worst problems in the world for a while, you get past it. I think when I can start removing some of the feelings of personal worth with it, that's where you can set yourself up for better success. Nothing was intentional, but it felt really, really bad at the time. But it was something that you just moved past. I think that would be a good example of something especially with the work that I'm in now. Again, when you're dealing with big numbers and you're dealing with what I said before, it feels very high stakes and you don't want to mess up. You're going to probably mess up, and you have to just move on and allow yourself to feel bad about it, but not for too long.
Yeah. So can we talk through that a little bit? We don't have to give out any more details here. But you're touching upon something that I can see, employees, especially making a career change, making a move into a part of a business or an industry that they've never experienced before. And that like pressure of, if you don't mind, I'll speak for myself. Like I had to convince, let's use that word here. I was like, I had to fight, I had to control that. And like, no, I had to convince. And eventually I just had to just do I had to take a stand when it came to my own family about changing my careers over here. And, there ends up being pressure from just both the past experience of like, am I making the right choice? And then the other part of it being like, I'm here in the moment. Am I doing a good job now that I'm here? I was like, given all that, like given that as like the framework here, what I would love to do is talk through a little bit about like how you kind of move past it. Because I think even just like 2 or 3 different ways that you've gone, maybe it's like taking a walk, maybe it's like writing it down or something like that, but just to help employees have something tangible to really feel comfortable making mistakes. I think that's my ultimate goal would be like, how do you get comfortable making mistakes and knowing that like you can walk past it? And I think that's, like you said, through experience. If you can share something, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, again, it is very difficult for me. I'm certainly a perfectionist by every sense of the word. Doesn't mean that everything's perfect, but I get very, I strive for a certain level of perfection, or a level of perfection. I think the biggest thing that I have found has been beneficial is just owning it. If you make a mistake, and it truly was your responsibility, then just not blaming somebody else for it. Just say, you know what, I did it. That would be the first thing, I think, to at least put yourself in the right light is, okay, well, it happened. And, I think the other thing is questioning what really is going, if you can take being fired out of the equation, if it's that you're upset that people are going to be upset with you, well, that's going to happen. And then you move past it. I think for me, it has to dig deep, digging a little bit deeper as to so they're upset at me. So what? Why is that so bad? Well, because it makes me uncomfortable. Okay. Well, then you can get past that as well. People will be upset at you, but you can only control so much. I think they'll be more inclined to be impressed with you depending on how you handle the situation after the mess up, so to speak. I think owning the situation and just admitting it, if it really falls into your court, is a huge step that I think speaks a lot about that person.
Wow, Sam, and it's cool because it seems like you're like, it's what happens after the mistake that really sets the tone of what actually occurred there. And I the fact that we're talking about this topic here, and you still were able to put in like they could end up being impressed with you at the end of it all. I think that's something pretty impactful.
Yeah, I think that's it's like any kind of customer service experience when say a hotel has the room is dirty when you get there, but it's how they handle the situation, which could cause you to be really impressed, maybe even more so than you would have been if it hadn't happened. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of character comes out of, or true character comes out of how you handle, of course, a misfortune or a mistake. And again, I say that it's easy for me to sit here and say that now because some of this is in the past. You come to me, next time I have a big major catastrophe, and I'll probably be a mess for a little bit, and I hope I will take my own advice.
Just listen back to this podcast episode and say, what would Sam of the past have said? Because it's going to happen at some point, right? We all, like, it's just the part of life. Let's put it this way. The way I like to look at it is like, if we weren't because we're doing things that are meaningful and impactful, even the smallest things can go in any direction. So
and I'll say one more thing. I think that when you find work that comes from a place of your own instincts and creativity and drive, it is probably even more difficult when things don't go well because it feels more personal. If you're in a job where you're kind of clocking in and out, you're less invested in the company or the work you're doing, maybe those won't resonate as much, but it will sting, and it does sting when things don't go so well in the work that you actually are very passionate about.
Yeah. Wow. That's deep there, Sam. It's like it hurts because you care,
Yeah, for sure.
It hurts because you care. Well, like let's talk about another moment that you might care about that might bring you tears of joy when you go back and think about it in terms of how proud you are of the moment here. So flipping this whole thing all around, would you mind telling us about a project or something you did at work or along your journey that just like fills you with great joy? Like the way I would look at it is like, if the memory of this experience was taken away from you, you would experience like deep sorrow.
Well, I think actually a lot of it goes back to what the experience I was mentioning with Credit Karma, because the second part of that story is after that experience, we did that tour for Credit Karma. We had that ride. What was really cool was because that was a pretty unique project for the industry, for the event marketing industry, as well as the amusement industry. There was a couple publications that did some pieces on this project. and this marketing event. And one of which was in a publication that I had been reading for years as a kid, trying to get into the amusement industry. It's called Fun World Magazine. It's a official publication of the amusement park trade organization, and it was published right before the trade show this past year. So when I went back to the trade show this year, I had now involvement in the industry professionally, and I just felt really proud walking up and down the aisles because this was a trade show that I hadn't been going to since I was 13, dreaming of the day that I would be able to be at this trade show with legitimate business reason. And it, again, came from an industry that I didn't even think I'd be in, but yet came very full circle. So I'd say probably one of my most proudest moments was just being able to walk up and down this trade show aisles, feeling like I had done something in the industry that was noteworthy. And that was it. Yeah, that's what I think is really comes close to top of mind.
Wow, Sam. I'm sitting here like, Joyce, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to just indulge us for a second. I turned off my video because of the connection, but I'm putting it on right now just so Sam, you can see this here. I am smiling. I am so happy for you. I have goosebumps all over my arm here because that is just such a great realization of something that you've been working towards and something you've been looking to experience for years. So I'm going to go back off video here just for you all, but like congratulations on that. Thank you for sharing that. So if you had to give us like one takeaway from that experience that Joyce might be able to walk away with, what would you suggest for us?
Well, actually, Nemo, could you clarify a little bit? Do you mean from that experience? I mean, you don't have to record this part, but do you mean from the trade show, or do you? I guess I'm just from which experience?
Yeah. So I guess my big thing is like now that you've had that experience, that proud moment there, is there anything that you would kind of like suggest or even tell yourself or tell someone else going forward that related to how that like led up or what maybe they can use to help them move forward in future instances?
Yeah. I think with experience like that was truly a high point for myself personally and professionally. And that doesn't happen all the time. I mean, I think that it was so memorable because it was rare. I mean, there are plenty of days where I'm not particularly excited about what I'm doing in the moment. But I do think of, again, I keep referencing my dad with some of the advice that he's given me. And when we've been talking, and he said, if you're generally more happy than you're not, that's a pretty good sign. And I think the pros outweighs the cons for sure in this role. And I think when you can actively remind yourself of the good stuff and the peaks that you experience, it really does kind of outweigh a lot of the really unpleasant stuff with any job or the day-to-day. And again, there's plenty of mornings where I'm not thrilled to get up and go, but there's some huge payoffs. And I think that is something that I'm experiencing a lot now in this industry is there's these huge spikes, and that comes with a lot of hard work that a lot of people don't see in the background. And that's infinite conference calls and thousands upon thousands of emails and many sleepless nights over whether or not like a shipment of balloons is going to arrive. I mean, it may seem trivial, but some of the stuff, again, because it's coming from a place of real passion, I keep saying that word, these things will seem very important. So for all the highs, there's going to be a lot of stress. And I think that's a good thing because it keeps you on your toes. So I wouldn't be scared of the stress. That's why I like to go back to give it some time, give it a year, give it some time to really see all sides of it, to experience a high in that time so you can see the payoff of your work.
Yeah. Wow. If you don't mind, I'm going to make a few quick comments here. Firstly, well, the first thing is passion. And I heard this on a podcast the other day, so I haven't verified this externally. And Joyce, feel free to join the community and let me know if I'm right or wrong on this here. But they said that the word passion is derived from a word that means to suffer. And so, like, I totally hear you when you're like, your passion is causing you like the ups and the downs. And I think that's part of what makes it such a good thing. The other part here is I just want to just thank you for just being extremely real about this here, about like, you're like, not every day is like the best day ever, you know? And I think it's important with a with a business and a movement around helping people find enjoyment through employment, there's no part of that suggests that every day is going to be the best day ever. But like generally speaking, you're going to have like the way I'm hoping is that people experience exponential levels of joy as it goes along. And it seems like for like here, you found a way to get almost like a lifetime worth achievement in just 4 years of working on the job here. And so what's really fun is like what is going to come next for you. And I love to explore that. I have to say, so in my previous role, I also spent a lot of time putting together different events and worked on a team that was focused on internal culture and internal events. And part of this all being like, do you walk the walk? Do you talk the talk? And are the balloons going to get there or not? And wait, are they already filled with air or not? It's like, what are we going to do with this here? And I think it's one of those things where I having lived it a lot, really respect the work that's done there, and I appreciate you bringing up some of those small things, because we can talk about the grand items there, but now my mind is thinking, how did they move this car, this ride from one place to another?
About all the permitting and the insurance, and again, for all the quote fun, there was a whole lot of behind the scenes. So yeah, you're right. There's a lot of work behind any of this, I think that's another key takeaway.
That's so much fun. Like, thank you for giving us the full picture there, and the end result could be something that you can feel really, really great about. So let's go ahead and wrap things up here, Sam. I'd love to know, like, looking like right now, we've talked about the things in the past, like bringing it to present times. What's one thing about your journey that really excites you right now? I
think what I'm excited about is that the industry that I'm currently in, there is no predictability to it. And the experience, what I've been mentioned before is just one of a number of experiences I've been like, wow, this is just nuts, in a good way. And there's going to be a lot more of that to come. I think that it goes back to being open to just letting some of this stuff just come at you and taking it that way, as opposed to trying to plan how you think things are going to go. And I'll be honest, a question I'm not particularly fond of is, where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years? And because I could never have imagined this would have happened 5 years ago. And this has yet brought me more joy and fulfillment than anything else I thought would have. So I think that there's some mix of planning, but also, again, just saying yes to things and seeing where they go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that, Sam. I've gotten a lot from this conversation myself, and I'm sure that employees have gotten the same here. Before we end things off here, I'd love to give you a chance. Do you have any questions for me? Anything that comes to mind that you'd love me to talk through? You've been really great at answering my questions. And you don't need to. I just want to make sure I provide this space.
Now I want to know, what was a sleepless night that you had over something with your work, or something that came from a place of passion?
That's a great question. All right, hold on. Let me think about this for a little bit here. So, all right, because I want to make sure I'm answering this one fully. I think I'm probably missing something else, but there was one big project that I took on that was really around connecting our global company and all the different offices that were there. We had 26 different offices, and it was like, how do we help highlight and share some of the things that are going on all across our organization so that other people get a chance to experience it? And I think the sleepless aspect for me was that, for a number of months, we had been planning and getting different content and bringing all these people together and to share their experiences. And it was probably the day before we went live with it all together. Now, I'll be honest. I really had nothing to worry about, because my coworker was like, I'll help you with this one part. I'll schedule the actual sending of like drafting the newsletter and sending it out. But there was that aspect of like, this is happening right now. And if this is going to set the tone for the rest of us, the rest of the programs and initiatives related to bringing a lot of our organization together, and so I remember that one in particular. Like I keep going back to, I meditate on something that I'm truly grateful for, and at least every few days I come back to that memory, and I'm grateful not for the sleepless night, because more from the fact that I could look over to my coworker and she's like, hey, I'm going to be available. I know this is a big deal. Like no matter what happens, like I got your back, you know? And so I consistently go back to that moment as a moment of gratitude. So I will take all the anxiety around like, is this going to work? And is this the right thing? And, you know, did everything come about for that moment of gratitude of just knowing that like, hey, no matter what, I just wasn't out there alone. So that's the thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that.
Yeah. Oh man. And you know how these things are, especially with events. And I like live because at the end of the day, you can at least control the experience to some extent, you know, where you're like, oh, yep, none of the balloons came, but there weren't ever supposed to be balloons. You didn't know that. So, we're just going to keep rolling with it, you know?
Yeah. There's nothing like that. The 11th hour feeling of when we're about to open the doors to the event or the concert. And it's like, well, it's going to happen and it's going to work. We're going to make it work, whatever ends up happening.
Yeah.
So, and shit, I'm sorry, but stuff happens.
That happens.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Sam, I really appreciate all this here. If there was one thing you're going to leave employees with as a result of this conversation, what would you want to pass them on with? And then can you let us know how we can stay in touch with you?
So I guess my closing little summary would be plan, but don't plan too much when it comes to your life, I think, especially with regards to your career path. And yeah, as far as getting in touch with me, I mean, I'm certainly available on via email, and I don't know if Nemo, you'll have a link to that. Happy to chat with people via Skype if that's ever something that's useful. Yeah, I definitely would love to take some of this and energy and enthusiasm I have and help inspire somebody else.
All right. Thank you, Sam. And, you know, Sam, if it's okay with you, we're going to be setting up the enjoyment community out here. I'd love to send you an invitation. We've invited some of our past guests and some other listeners just to come together and, you know, build something meaningful and help support each other as we're making some of these changes. So if that works for you, I'd love to invite you to that as well. All right.
That sounds good.
All right. Well, I'm glad to hear it. Thank you so much for taking the time here. I know it's late in your where you're at. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. And I just really appreciate your expertise, your experiences, and just your overall genuine giving throughout this conversation. You're a truly incredible person. And thank you for sharing your story with us.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Nemo. This is great. It's a great experience.
It's a really cool thing here because we consistently talk about joy and experiencing joy. And it's awesome how Sam's able to use that to be able to craft amazing opportunities for his clients, even when the pressure is on. So now it's up for us to be able to figure out our own secret power, our own way of tapping into our best selves, even when the stakes are high. Because quite frankly, while Sam was able to share how he approaches these situations and is able to get his peak performance, his solution is not necessarily going to be the same for everyone else. I'll go ahead and even share what I do. For me, when I get in a high stakes situation, I meditate on 3 things that make me grateful. And I just try and re-experience those moments, literally walking into my body and just seeing things from my eyes once again and experiencing it as much as I possibly can. And from there, that brings me a place of comfort and joy, which alleviates the fear and allows me to just move forward and spread joy to others. So I'll be really interested in a time where you were in a high stakes work situation and the way you felt, the things you did to put yourself in a position where you could still deliver results. That's your journey for today. And that's what we would love to have a conversation about over in the Empjoyment community. It's simple to be a part of the conversation. Just go to empjoyment.com/community or type the word community to 33444 in your phone, and then you'll get all the next steps from there. And the fun part about this is that like I'm doing Facebook Lives, I'm chatting with people in real time, and we're helping each other out because that's what a community does. So come on in. We invite you. Come be a part of the Empjoyment community and let's make some great things happen together. It brings me great joy to wish you an opportunity to experience joy each and every day. Take care, Empjoyees.